is Dr. George for Tucked In Tuesdays, and I had accidentally deleted this week when I should have deleted last week's because I had a meeting. So we're finishing up on our books, and it is State Capital. Those of you that have been following me along, we're almost done, almost done. And I have a lot planned for March because March is Women's Month, and we are going to celebrate all the women, all girls, all things next month. So if you're into celebrating women, that's your thing. You should. I mean, the world would be great without us. Make sure you tune in the week of March, the month of March. Sorry. So I have state capitals here, and it's explore the capital cities of our 50 states. So I have read lots about every single state. My onesie here, my bear, is from Natasha Garrett, owner of G&G Construction, so co-owner. So I wanted to tell her thanks. So let me get started with these books, and I'm throwing in some little special surprises tonight. We're Tucked In Tuesday, so join in. All righty. So we have, oops, the screen went off. Let's see who we have watching in my comments. Derek was watching. I don't know if he's still watching, but he was watching. So let's get started. So my first state that we're going to talk about is New York. So New York is the state, and the capital is Albany. And it was the home of the first successful regularly operating steam railway, which ran on the Mohawk and Hudson Railroad. The train made daily round trips between, this is a big word, Schenectady. I'm from Louisiana, so we just say it like it looks. And Albany, picking up and delivering passengers at both destinations. Its very existence was evidence of the forward-thinking ideas that would catapult New York State into the modern industrial era. So, capital population, there are 98,000 people there, but in the whole state, there's 19.4 million people. Other large cities there are New York City, Buffalo, and Rochester. So, several big states there. So July 26, 1788 was when the date it entered the Union. The state flower is the rose, and the state animal is the beaver. So couple of things here. So right there, that's New York. I wanted it to come into focus, and it's way up here in this tiny spot, way up there. And this is their flag. I'm sorry about the lighting. Let me see if I can turn off the lighting, make it a little bit better. Made it a little bit better. So that's the flag. Not really. That's the flag. I got to do something about my lighting. So the first place that we'll visit is the Albany Tulip Festival. And you know what? Dr. George's favorite flower is, guess what? A tulip. And it features more than 140,000 tulips. It's held every spring in this 89-acre park. Number 2, we're going to visit the Empire State Plaza. Let's visit the underground concourse beneath Albany's government complex to find shops, cafes, and a world-class modern art collection. Number 3, New York State Women's Veterans Memorial. Dedicated in 1998, this memorial honors the women of New York State who have served in the armed forces. Number 4, New York State Museum. One of the oldest museums in the United States, is renowned for its collection of Hudson River School paintings. So if you're watching, you can put the comments in, and then I'll put them on the screen if you're putting comments in. Number 5, the Corning Tower Observation Deck. So that is where you can witness amazing views of Albany from the observation deck at the top of its tallest building. Number 6, explore galleries showcasing New York's natural and cultural history before heading to the top floor to ride on an antique carousel. And that is the New York State Museum. Number 7, It's the Shaker Heritage Society. That's the site of the first Shaker settlement has been preserved, complete with buildings, gardens, and a cemetery. And number 8, the USS Slater, the only one of 563 destroyer escorts in service in World War II, still afloat, has been restored and is now a museum ship. So there are a couple of things that I did a little research last night, or today, I should say. And so I looked up Black history in each state. So here's New York's Black history. And I have been to New York, not Albany, but I've been to the state. And so February is Black History Month, and New York is filled with them. So a couple of places that caught my attention is, and I know I'm going to let you see these, the Colored Musicians Club. Greater Niagara is a hot spot for jazz and creativity. Harriet Tubman, the National Historic Park, Finger Lakes, she was known as the Moses of her people. She helped countless freedom seekers along the Underground Railroad, making several daring rescue trips back to the South. Today, you can explore the history of the Underground Railroad and learn more about her journey at the Harriet Tubman National Historic Park in Auburn. So there's other things on there. So lots of places to go. And then there's Harlem, New York, the Apollo Theater. You all have seen that, Sandman Sam's, and Steve Harvey was one of the hosts there. So that is that, and it's Black owned. And then there's the National Baseball Hall of Fame, the Jackie Robinson Museum, Niagara Falls Underground Railroad Heritage Center. So lots of places right there in New York. So let me get back to and stop sharing, our next state, which is going to be North Carolina, and the state capital is Raleigh. Raleigh was founded in 1792 and named after the English explorer, Sir Walter Raleigh. Although he had sponsored expeditions to what is now North Carolina in the late 1500s, he never actually visited North America himself. Once Raleigh was chosen as the state's capital, it was carefully planned with streets designed in a grid pattern that remains today. So the capital population, 404,000, 9.6 million in the state. Other large cities are Charlotte, Durham, and Greensboro. And we have a comment here. And hello, it's Ava, Ari, and Pop Pop. Hello. So the date entered the Union, November 21st, 1789. State flower, dogwood. State mammal, gray squirrel. And so here's North Carolina here, and it's considered in the South. And so it's a little, I'm sorry about the lighting in here, but here it is. And North Carolina, I'm sorry, is right here, kind of right. That's there we go. Right there where the purple is. And that's the flag. So hi, Miss Jackson, if you're still there. So a couple of places about in North Carolina. Number 1, discover art from all over the world. Stroll through the nation's largest museum park or enjoy a concert in the outdoor amphitheater at the North Carolina Museum of Art. The second one is the Memorial Bell Tower. It's 115 feet tall, made of granite. It's a legend in stone. It was originally built to honor North Carolina state students killed in World War I. 3, you can ride the carousel, hop aboard the train, or go for a swim at North Carolina's first public park, and that's the Pullen Park. And we'll go up to number 4, the Lassiter Mill Park. You can see the remains of a former water mill at this peaceful park and enjoy Crabtree Creek as it flows down the dam. Number 5, home to every North Carolina governor since 1891, this Victorian-style mansion has also hosted thousands of visitors as the North Carolina Executive Mansion. And then we move on down to number 6 at Moore Square. This picturesque 4-acre park is one of the oldest public spaces in the city. Number 7, City of Raleigh Museum, located in the historic Briggs Hardware Building. This is the place to explore Raleigh's rich past. And number 8, learn about farming life in the 19th century and celebrate the region's agricultural heritage, historic Oakview County Park. So we're going to visit North Carolina. I always pull these things up. And what I did this time, since it is Black History Month, is I mentioned the things in the book, but we also go down the road and we look at different states and different things they have in each state. So North Carolina, let's see. Make sure I have North Carolina. That's North Dakota. Let's see. North Carolina. Here we go. North Carolina. So North Carolina, there's 10 places that they mentioned to explore African American history there. And they have the Harvey B. Gantt Center for African American Arts and Culture. And look at the architecture on this building. Superb. So then there's the African American Heritage Walking Tour, where you can actually take walks, go to historical homes and churches. And then there's the Nina Simone Plaza. And then there's the International Civil Rights Center and Museum. And it's in downtown Greensboro. It's the former F.W. Woolworth retail store. It's the site where in 1964, freshmen from North Carolina A&T sat down at the whites only lunch counter and challenged the laws of segregation. And so that reignited the quest for all Americans to stand up for freedom, justice, and equality. And so then we have the YMI Cultural Center here. And then we have this big word here. I am going to look up the pronunciation of that word because I don't want to. I messed up one word earlier today. So let me get the pronunciation of that word. Let's see. Pronunciation. Let's see. Because that's a big word. That's a Chickamauga. That's what it is. And yeah, that's exactly what it is. And so we have that place there. And that's a life-saving station. And then we have the Oliver Nestus Freedom Roundhouse Museum, Harriet Jacobs Trail, and then the Charlotte Hawkins Brown Museum at Historic Palmer Memorial Institute, the St. Philip's Moravian Church, and that is it. But each state has a little bit of a highlight, and this was just updated February 11th. So thank you for updating that. North Carolina. So we're going to move right along to our next state. And our next state is North Dakota. And North Dakota is way at the top, up here, up north, way up here. We see the little blue, and that's the flag. North Dakota, the capital has 62,000 people, state population 673,000. The other large cities are Fargo, Minot, Grand Forks. Date entered the Union November 2nd, day before my birthday. But in 1889, state flowers, the wild prairie rose, state bird, western meadowlark. The capital is Bismarck, and it has 4 very distinct seasons, with temperatures dropping below zero in January. Over a single year, the city has been known to receive more than 90 inches of snow. I'm only 69 inches. So, God, that's pretty tall. It's pretty awesome. And in 2007, thousands of people came to the state capitol grounds, laid down in the snow, and set a Guinness World Record for the most snow angels ever made at the same time in one place. They made 8,962, beating the previous record of 3,784. So, number 1 is the Lewis and Clark Riverboat. Is an old-style paddle wheel steamer that recreates past journeys as it cruises through the mighty Missouri River. Number 2, the Keelboat Park. You can take a self-guided tour at this park to see a 55-foot keelboat replica like the one used by Lewis and Clark. Number 3 is the Dakota Zoo, and I love a good zoo. There's over 100,000 people that visit it each year. There's 125 species, including birds, reptiles, and more. Number 4 is the North Dakota State Capitol. And North Dakota's government meets in a 241-foot Art Deco skyscraper surrounded by parkland and other governmental buildings. Number 5 is Camp Hancock State Historic Site. This was a former military installation and is a perfect place to explore artifacts and information about local history. And we travel down to number 6, where we can trace the history of North Dakota from early geologic formation through present day of the state's largest museum, and that's North Dakota Heritage Center and State Museum. Number 7 is the McDowell Dam Recreation Area. Escape into nature just a few miles outside Bismarck and go boating and fishing or take a picnic to the beach. Then last stop there is the Buck Stop Junction. Historic buildings from across the state have been moved here to recreate a typical North Dakota town at the turn of the century. So just like everything else, I looked up North Dakota to see what they have for Black History Month. So let's see what they have. Let's see. So here we go. This is North Dakota, and there's history for everyone there. And then they have the Junior Historians Black History Month. And some of the famous African Americans in North Dakota were baseball players. You can learn about their history and play baseball themed bingo. Children in kindergarten through 5th grade are invited to a free interactive learning series called Junior Historians at the North Dakota Heritage Center and State Museum in Bismarck, which is their capital. Children and their accompanying adults are asked to meet at the West Entrance Information Desk. So it's where they're going to cultivate an interest and passion for North Dakota's history through weekly themes and 30-minute programs. You'll listen to stories, participate in activities and discussions, and learn in a fun and engaging way. So that's something that they're doing in North Dakota. Not a whole bunch, but there's an effort. So thank you, North Dakota, for doing that. Now we're going to go to the next state. And the next state is, we have 2 more states, Ohio. So Ohio, the capital is Columbus, and there are 787,000 people that live in the capital, 11.5 million in the state. The other large cities are Dayton, Cleveland, Cincinnati. Date entered the Union March 1st, 1803. The state flower is the red carnation. The state animal is the white-tailed deer. The capital is Columbus. The Wright brothers lived in Ohio, and the state has a well-deserved reputation as a center for aviation. Ohio has produced an incredible 25 astronauts, including Neil Armstrong and John Glenn, and Columbus alone provided several of the top World War I pilots. In 1964, Geraldine Friedrichs Mock became the first woman to fly solo around the world, a journey that began and ended in Columbus. I've always heard it was Amelia Earhart. Number 1, North Bank Park. You hit the trails for a stroll along the Seattle River. Excuse me. Signs provide information on the history of Columbus. Number 2, the Seattle Mile. It's 175-acre urban oasis, contains everything from a climbing wall to a 15,000 square foot interactive fountain. Number 3 is the gavel, huge gavel, 30 feet long, stainless steel sculpture, often billed as the world's largest gavel, honors Ohio's Supreme Court. Number 4, the German Village. Every year, Oktoberfest is celebrated in this historic district, once the home of thousands of German immigrants. Number 5, you can ride the carousel, listen to music, or take in one of the 200 plus events held annually in the 6-acre park at Columbus Commons. Number 6, the Kilton family were active abolitionists, and this Victorian era museum was once a stop on the Underground Railroad. Number 7, the Topiary Park is one of George's famous paintings, is recreated in this landscape throughout the park. And last but not least is the Franklin Park Conservatory, Botanical Gardens, discover exotic plants from around the world, explore seasonal art exhibits, and more at this botanical landmark. And right here is Ohio, right here, kind of at the top, up north. And there's the flag. So up here where the pink is. So that's where Ohio is. And so let me pull up our Black history from Ohio. Ohio. So here we go. And it talks a lot about it. You can scroll down a little bit, and they have a mural. Families be visiting a mural there. And then we have the Harlot Beecher Stowe House. And that's, remember, we talked about the abolitionists. Um, this isn't it. This is where famous authors spent their formative years. And that's where they wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, at this house there. And then the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati, and National Afro American Museum and Cultural Center in Wilberforce. And then we have the Charles Young Buffalo Soldiers National Monument in Wilberforce. First free black school in Harvestburg. So this is a one-room schoolhouse and now museum built specifically to educate non-whites in Warren County. The Elizabeth Harvey Free Black School was built in 1831 and is now an historic place. Became that in 1977, still stands in its original location. It operated until the early 1900s, and one of the students from this school became the first African American captain in the U.S. Army and is buried in the Arlington National Museum. And so here is Paul Lawrence Dunbar House in Dayton. And then we have, what a beautiful building, Ohio History Connection in Columbus. And there are several other places there that you can visit. So thank you, Ohio, for highlighting those places. So now we're going to go back and finish our very last state, Oklahoma. So we have Oklahoma. Capital is Oklahoma City, and it became a territory for Native American nations that the U.S. government forcibly relocated from the rest of the country. However, the end of the Civil War brought expansion west, and eventually much of the land was opened up to white settlers. And just one day in 1889, over 10,000 settlers arrived in Oklahoma City to claim land. Capital population, 580,000. State population, 3.7 million. Other large cities, Edmond, Tulsa, and Norman. Date entered the Union, November 16, 1907. State flower, Oklahoma rose, and the state animal is the bison. Now here sits kind of right in the middle of everything. So that's Ohio, right there in the blue, and that's the state underneath. So let's see what places they talk about. Number one is the Overholser Mansion. Step into the past at this grand mansion originally built in 1903 by Henry, considered by many to be the father of Oklahoma City. Yes, Miss Jackson, it is great information. I'm reading it for the first time, so I'm learning. Number two is the Oklahoma Hall of Fame at the Gaylord Pickens Museum. And it's an interactive museum which honors extraordinary Oklahomans and inspires others through a celebration of their stories. Number three is Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum. Remember those who were killed, those who survived, and those whose lives was changed forever by the April 1995 bombing at this memorial. Number four, the Sky Dance Bridge. It's easy to see the inspiration behind the pedestrian bridge and sculpture, Oklahoma State bird, the scissor-tailed flycatcher. So let me show you that bridge. Let it focus a little bit. And there it is. Kind of looks like a bird. So that's it. And then we're going to travel up to the National Cowboy of Western Heritage Museum. And there's more than 10 million visitors that have toured this premier collection of arts and artifacts of the West. And let me see, I have Mr. Thibodeau. I'm getting your comments, but I'm not understanding why I'm not seeing them on the page. So let me go to my page and see what Mr. Thibodeau is saying. Mr. Thibodeau. Oh, he says, I think this is what the Lilies of the Field is based on. But Mr. Thibodeau, he said, hi, Dr. George. Hi, Brayson. Hello, hello, hello. Make sure you're watching the live one. That's what I think is happening. Adam, he has a little one. So let me make sure. Let's see. Let me text him real quick. All right, I did send him a text so that Brayson can get on here and see. Sorry about that. Number 6, the Homestead. Step back in time to learn about life in territorial Oklahoma at this original land run property turned outdoor museum. And then number 7, the American Banjo Museum. The largest collection of banjos in the world on public display explores the history of this American instrument. And number 8, the Skeletons Museum of Osteology. The first of its kind in the U.S., this celebration of all things skull and skeleton features hundreds of exhibits from around the world. So let's see what Oklahoma has with Black history. So here is Oklahoma. So here is their page. And they have African American history and culture in Oklahoma. So they have a page for the Freedom Trail, the Heritage Museum, history and historical sites. This is after the Civil War, African Americans were welcomed into the Army and were called Buffalo Soldiers by Native Americans for their valiant fighting. And so Oklahoma is tightly woven with Black history from the military, frontier, Western, and modern history. And so it tells you a little bit about the pre-statehood before. The Trail of Tears brought many African Americans into Indian territory when thousands of Native Americans were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands between 1830 and 1842. Many who made the journey were enslaved by Native Americans, but a group of 500 agreed to move to Indian territory in exchange for their freedom, known as the Gullah, a West African enclave that lived side by side with refugee Seminoles in Florida. This group of 500 made this journey as freemen. Those that survived the trip either remained enslaved until treaties between the U.S. and American tribes were ratified, or lived among the tribes as Black Seminoles. So you can learn more. And there's the military medal, tells you a little bit about the freed slaves joining the Union forces stationed in the Indian territory. And so there's all Black towns. So the land was very cheap in the Indian territory, and they had systematic racism, and many African Americans had to settle in exclusively Black towns. So after the Civil War, the leaders recruited free slaves to these all Black settlements by advertising a promised land of business opportunity, wealth, and safety. So between 1865 and 1920, approximately 50 all Black towns were settled in Oklahoma, although the number declined after the Great Depression. 13 of the original 13 of the original settlements are still incorporated in Oklahoma today. So that's neat. I didn't know that. So there's the Old West that they talk about. The Black cowboy culture emerged after the Civil War as African Americans in Indian territory became everything from cowhands to bandits. And so then you'll look a little bit more. There's deep deuce. There's jazz that came about in the 1940s. And then we have the civil rights movement. And it was not immune to the battle over civil rights. Racism persisted, was still going on, still evident in the Greenwood district of Tulsa. Its strict segregation laws, they kept the majority of African American population concentrated along the city's Greenwood Avenue. And it was here that the Black Wall Street thrived with a variety of successful businesses, newspapers, artistic venues, and churches. And in 1921, racial tensions within the city erupted into one of the worst massacres in U.S. history. And during that time, the Tulsa Race Massacre happened. Over 40 square blocks in Greenwood had been reduced to rubble. So that's what happened to the Black Wall Street. So there's lots of history there, and thank Oklahoma for sharing that. And there's a couple of pictures that you can see there. I love learning new stuff. Didn't know all of this stuff, so it's pretty awesome to hear it. So that is it for tonight. Next week, we'll be reading about Oregon, Pennsylvania. Let me make sure I'm reading the right one. Let's see. Make sure I got all of my states covered. Oh, yep, that's all of them. So next week I'll be reading Oregon, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and South Dakota. And then we'll end the following week at maybe at the end. Yes, we'll be done. So only 2 more weeks of the states, and then we'll get on with everything else. So thank you guys for coming. Remember, if nobody else tells you, Dr. George loves you. And I want to share my biggest takeaway from this book. My biggest takeaway from this book is there's so much of the world that we have yet to learn. And even if you don't have the financial privilege of traveling to these places, tune in to Tucked In Tuesdays. I kind of take you on a virtual tour of each state, but the remainder of the month of February will be highlighting Black history in each of the remaining states. So, guys, have a great night on purpose. Remember, if nobody else tells you, Dr. George loves you. Good night.